putting out tons and tons of rankings. We put out dynasty, we put out redraft, IDP, offense. We've covered all the positions. It's all out there for you guys. So now that we've covered all of the rankings, covered all those positions, I think it's time we take a look at the NFL from a team by team perspective. So I'm going to start off with some team reviews here in just a second. IDP Plus YouTube channel. My name is Axton Harding, and I am your host today. And a little bit of a switch up from the rankings we've been putting out. I want to get into some team reviews. I want to look at the coaching staffs, the lines, the offense, the defense, and I want to give a little bit of a breakdown. If there's not a whole lot of change, I'm not going to dive too much into it, but if there's some value to be extracted, or people are maybe overvalued, or there's certain things that I think we should key in on and pay attention to, I'm going to lay it all out here for you guys, and I'm going to try to get through as many teams as I can. Well, first, we're going to start off with the AFC East, and we're going to go through there, and then from there, we're just going to kind of float through the rest of the NFL as much as I can until we get to the season. So without further ado, we can go ahead and jump right into it. And to start us off here with the Buffalo Bills of the AFC East, we'll talk a little bit about the coaching changes. There's just really not a whole lot. Offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, head coach, all the same. The team should operate pretty well similarly to what we could expect from years past. Now, in terms of, since there's not a whole lot of change there, I'm not going to go into a whole lot of depth. This team was primarily a rush-first offense, obviously with a rushing quarterback and James Cook in the backfield. They just didn't really prefer to throw the ball near as much because they just don't quite have the repertoire in the receiving game. So they don't quite have the kind of guys who have that ability to really go out and make plays quite like Josh Allen and James Cook do in the run game. If we look at the offensive line, it was a pretty good offensive line overall. It was a top 10 unit in terms of efficiency in pass and run blocking last year. They were just pretty efficient overall, and they didn't really make too many changes. They didn't lose too many guys. They added some depth here at guard, but there's not really a whole lot of change in terms of the offensive line, so it should still remain pretty consistent. Like I said, top 10 performing in terms of attempts. This team just really heavily favored the run game, and they were very efficient. They were top 10 in both rush and pass blocking. So again, now if we look at just kind of how this team's going to operate, I think that the league as a whole is kind of shifting back to a run first scheme, where you're seeing a lot of defenses put 5 defensive backs on the field. And that's kind of shifted over the last couple of years as we've seen quarterbacks really emerge and put pressure on defensive backs. We've seen a lot more teams go pass heavy first. So now that we're kind of getting to where defenses are kind of keying in on it, I really expect offenses to kind of shift back to the run heavy scheme. The Bills have already been that way last year, as I mentioned. They were a run first team with Josh Allen and the kind of pass catchers they have in this room. They just really prefer to hit the ground game first and see what they can do there, and then that opens up the pass game for them. So that now, if we look at Josh Allen, the head of the offense, the play caller here, Josh Allen, nothing really changes here. He's got a good offensive line. He's still going to run first. He's got the upside in the rushing game, and he's a great passer as well. If he needs to, he can get it done. But really, that passing upside is kind of capped with the kind of pass catchers he has, because when you have guys like Keon Coleman, Khalil Shakir, Dalton Kincaid, you only have so much upside. None of these guys are really game breakers. They're not going to go out and just get 200 yards and a couple of touchdowns and just blow up the game. So. Or at least none of these guys have established themselves to that point. Not going to say that the upside isn't there, but we haven't seen that kind of floor. These guys just really haven't put up quite the ceiling that we want to see for a guy like Josh Allen, who can really sling the ball down the field. But nonetheless, nobody's really going to stop Josh Allen from running. If he wants to go out and get 15 or 20 yards on a scramble, he really is capable of doing that. And then, that just kind of leads into just his most valuable part of his game is using his legs, where he had 12 rushing touchdowns in 2024, 15 in 2023, and he has like a 500 to 700 rushing yard floor, which is outstanding for a quarterback. So, and then it can just really kind of go up from there. That's just kind of been his average so far since he's been in the league. He just really favors the run game, and this team is laying right into that, and it works well for the Buffalo Bills. So not a whole lot different for Josh Allen. I really expect things to kind of remain the same. Maybe he gets a little bit more passing to his game, but I imagine it's going to be heavily relied on in on the ground, and he should be one of the first quarterbacks off the board, no matter what league you're in. Super flex, he'll be one of the first players taken in one quarterback leagues. What, third, fourth round or so, right around where Lamar Jackson goes. So pretty ho-hum for Josh Allen. Running backs are kind of the same. We're looking at James Cook, Ray Davis, Ty Johnson. They re-signed Ty Johnson for a dev piece. James Cook's looking for a contract, so I guess there is kind of a little bit of ambiguity there. Now, I'm not going to say that James Cook is going to miss any time. I don't think we're looking at a Le'Veon Bell kind of situation. Technically, the Bills have him under contract for this season, so I imagine that he's going to put up quite. He's got something to play for. He's got a new contract to play for. If it's not with the Buffalo Bills, he's going to be looking to get a bag from somebody else in a contract year for James Cook. I pretty well expect him to perform. We've seen historically where players will perform typically better in a contract year if they want to go out and make some more money. Now, barring any injuries, he should perform well. I think we can expect a little bit of negative regression from the 16 touchdowns that we saw from him a year ago. That's pretty uncommon for running backs to consistently put up those kind of numbers, unless you're Derrick Henry, and James Cook is not anywhere close to a Derrick Henry. Now, if you're really worried about the contract situation and think that James Cook might be out of town after next year, this might be a good time to go get some Ray Davis. Right now, he's not really got much of a role in the Buffalo offense, but the opportunity could be there should the Bills not want to pay James Cook $15+ million a year. They drafted Ray Davis in the first few rounds, I believe, so they think of him pretty highly, just not quite highly enough to get him in and vulture any kind of production or opportunity from James Cook at this point. So yeah, if you have any worries about James Cook at all, then you might go buy low on Ray Davis, and then should James Cook go elsewhere, Ray Davis kind of pops into a nice role there. Should a rookie get drafted, unless it's just a high-end top tier rookie, Ray Davis should get a good chunk of the work in that scenario if James Cook were to leave. I'm not really worried about it. I think James Cook will either come down, the two will meet in the middle. Somehow or another, I feel like something's going to get done. Buffalo Bills really like James Cook. I just think James Cook is really coming off that 16 touchdown season. He is very reasonably feeling himself, so he wants to get paid what he feels like he deserves. So, like I said, I think things are going to come to an agreement. I think they probably extend him, but we'll just see. Keep an eye on that. Jay, like I said, he's under contract this year. He should play. I don't imagine him sitting out. If you want some value here, you might go see what the price tag is on Ray Davis and stash him. Now, if we look at the pass catchers, there has been some changes here to the pass catchers in the Buffalo Bills receiving room. Namely, they've added Josh Palmer from the LA Chargers and Elijah Moore from the Cleveland Browns. They lost Amari Cooper from last year, Matt Collins, Marquez Valdez-Scantling. And then this year they also retained Khalil Shakir, Keon Coleman, and Curtis Samuel. So this pass catching room is really just a bunch of Jags, just a guy, just a bunch of kind of random guys who don't really have even like wide receiver 2 ceiling from what we've seen. I think Khalil Shakir was even a wide receiver 3 last year as the leading pass catcher in this room. It's really not sexy at all. I think Shakir should be a fine floor play. He's going to get the kind of volume as a 1 to kind of at least be worthy of like a fill-in for your league. Not really a sexy flex play, but if you need to, there is some floor there. He's going to get some pretty consistent target share, 6 to 7 targets a game. It's just a matter of how much he catches and how far he goes with it, because typically it's been 10 yards, 10 yards, 10 yards, 10 yards. He's just a PPR slot merchant. The guy really just collects passes and goes about 10 yards at a time, and he'll get you about a couple points at a time. So maybe they can switch things up. They can get him in a little bit more space to be able to do some things. Then maybe Shakir can kind of present a little bit more upside. The opportunity should be there. But right now we just haven't seen that the Buffalo Bills want to use the passing game enough to really make any of these pass catchers just crazy valuable. Shakir goes pretty late in drafts. So yeah, as a number 1 for his team under, one of the league's best quarterbacks, I would imagine Shakir being a pretty good value later in drafts. Just not really somebody I'm going to go out and sell the farm for by any means. But if you need some depth, he's kind of a good floor play. So outside of Khalil Shakir, we just really got to see somebody step up in this offense. Maybe Keon Coleman make some big plays, but so far we just not seen any consistency from anybody else. Now, if we look at the tight end group, we haven't seen a whole lot of changes there. It's pretty well Dalton Kincaid. They drafted a 5th round tight end from Georgia Tech, Jackson Hawes, but I don't really anticipate him getting too much time or cutting into anything of Kincaid's this year. Now, Kincaid, if we look at back at last season, he kind of had quite a bit of a dip from his first year in the NFL. From what I hear and understand, Dalton Kincaid was hurt much of last season, so he was playing hampered for most of the year. Didn't really get a chance to get healthy for us to be able to see what he can do. So personally, obviously from last year, having been injured, I expect him to take a step. But with this passing offense, to what extent? They clearly favor the run game. They're not interested in just feeding targets to certain players or anyone really. But Dalton Kincaid is probably one of the more talented pass catchers on this team in general of all the wide receivers and anybody. I'd say he probably has the highest ceiling. So should anybody really catch fire and maybe Dalton Kincaid gets healthy and things kind of work out, he could be somebody who Josh Allen could be kind of looking to whenever he's leaking the pocket. So now, maybe Dalton Kincaid's injuries were keeping him from being in the right place at the right time and he wasn't able to keep up. Maybe things kind of fall into place this year. Now he's got two years under Josh Allen. They've got a little bit of extra chemistry. I think it's possible Dalton Kincaid could be a good value right now. Now I would imagine, considering the tight end landscape, he's not going to be very cheap. Again, Dalton Kincaid could potentially be a value this year. I expect a significant jump from at least a year ago. I think we could kind of see him more mimic that year one, but that's pretty high ceiling, and this team's kind of changed quite a bit since then. So we'll kind of take that with a grain of salt. But now if we take a look at, let's kind of go back out here. And before we get into it, I just want to talk to you guys a little bit about Bob Lung's consistency guide. Get a leg up on your opponents with Bob Lung's 10th annual edition of the Fantasy Football Consistency Guide for 2025. Go on Amazon and you can purchase yours for a measly $15. Amazon.com, Fantasy Football Consistency Guide, Bob Lung's 2025 Consistency Guide. It's got a lot of good information in there for you guys, and it's a lot of information that is not out there already. So go ahead and take a look at it, consider it $15. And you guys can just kind of get some information that not everybody has out there. So now let's jump into the rest of the show. We've got the Bills defense left to cover here. And let's talk a little bit about the Bills defensive line. Players they've lost in this defensive line include Von Miller. There's not a whole lot of other, relevant defensive linemen for your IDP leagues that we really need to consider here that they lost. Now, in terms of additions, this is kind of where it shakes things up. They've added Joey Bosa. They've added Michael Hoyt from the LA Rams. Joey comes from the Chargers. And then Larry Ogunjobi from the Pittsburgh Steelers last year. They also retain AJ Epinesa from last year. So they lose Von Miller, gain Joey Bosa, Michael Hoyt, and Larry Ogunjobi. Retain AJ Epinesa. I think he's got 1 year left on his deal. So to me, adding two respectable edge rushers really puts a damper on somebody like Greg Rousseau. And I should have mentioned Greg Rousseau with AJ Epinesa. I just kind of, imagine that was a given. But yes, they do keep Greg Rousseau. And I think considering the additions they've made, they kind of told us that they don't want Greg Rousseau on the field as much as he had to be out there last year because they kind of had some injuries and they were a little thinner. They were kind of running maybe 4 or 5 defensive linemen or 4 or 5 guys on the edge there last year. So there wasn't a whole lot in rotation and they needed Greg to be on the field more. So Greg, as a result, put up one of his best, if not his best, fantasy season last year. And he saw about 75% of snaps, which is, again, a career high for him because he's usually seeing about 50 to 60% of snaps so far throughout his career because the Buffalo Bills just historically like to rotate as many positions as they can. Linebacker is about the only position that they throw out 2 full-time players for. But on the defensive line, they'll rotate on the interior, they'll rotate on the edges, and as a result, Greg Rousseau, even though he's got the kind of talent that for IDP, we've been begging the Bills to give him a full-time role, and we saw that last year, and we got a good taste, and we love it, and now we're drafting him insanely right now. His ADP is off the charts. In an IDP-only league, he's going as a third-round value for a defensive end, and I think for me personally, it just kind of feels like one of those players we've valued highly, but we haven't really we haven't had the balls to go up and get him. So we kind of wait and get him as a value. And then now that he's finally produced the kind of numbers that we have been expecting, we're just like, oh yeah, let's go get him in the third round. But to me, adding Joey Bosa, adding Michael Hoyt from the LA Rams. And Michael Hoyt's not a special player, but he's definitely a good solid flex piece. And same with Larry Ogunjobi. Then you retain AJ Epinesa. Von Miller was kind of falling off last year, not really much of a loss there, but you've added some serious firepower to this defensive line and more solid depth to rotate in for Greg Rousseau, so you can feel good about scaling back his snaps because the replacement players are going to give you better production. Where last year they were kind of struggling outside of Greg Rousseau, so they had to put him on the field more. Now they're not going to have to do that this year. I think he falls down from 75 to maybe 65, 70, and that's going to put a big damper on his production as a result for IDP. So to me, the team's telling me they don't want Greg Rousseau on the field as often as he was last year. They signed some pretty notable names. I think Greg Rousseau is kind of overvalued right now, and I'm not going to say that he doesn't have the kind of upside should he get the opportunity, but to me that's kind of a big if considering what they're telling us with their actual signing and paying money, signing these players and giving them contracts. So to me, maybe Greg Rousseau presents a good sell high candidate. He might be somebody you can go out and get a second round pick for, and to me, considering the highest you're really going to get for a top end IDP is like a first round pick if you're lucky for like top end guys. If you can get a second round pick for Greg Rousseau, freaking cash in, man, because essentially with this kind of timeshare or with this kind of split and these kind of pieces rotating in, it's going to be tough for Greg Rousseau to really hit that same ceiling that we saw last year, especially considering the just risk for a dip in snaps and production. But there's just too much here, too many variables here for me to really feel good about Greg Rousseau building off of that 2024 season. So in my opinion, it might be a good opportunity to sell high on some Greg Rousseau. In terms of the overall scheme of this defense, I don't anticipate anything to change. The coaching scheme hasn't changed. There's not a whole lot that's going to change about this defense. They're going to continue to rotate on the defensive line and the defensive back row. Now, if we look at the linebackers, we've got not a whole lot. Nothing's changed there except for the addition of Shaq Thompson as a depth piece to this room. But being 35, 36 years old, I think Shaq Thompson is a break glass in case of emergency kind of player. And I just think that it's going to be Terrell Bernard and Matt Milano manning the middle of the linebacking room, and Dorian Williams, unfortunately, is going to be the odd man out. And I say that unfortunately because in IDP, he is an outstanding producer. Last year when he filled in, and even I think the year before, he actually played much of the entire season in his rookie season, and he was great. He was about a 10 tackle a week average, and he had an outstanding floor for IDP, if you remember from a couple of years ago. So we've been just salivating, just waiting for Dorian Williams to really get that full-time role. And no matter what, every time Matt Milano gets injured and he comes back, he gets popped right in there. So unfortunately, it's going to be Terrell Bernard is still an outstanding top-end linebacker. Just Matt Milano is nothing sexy. He's just a really good football player, NFL football player, but not a great producer for IDP. But nonetheless, the Bills do deploy 2 full-time linebackers, so there's going to be opportunity there. I just think it's going to be pretty ho-hum. We can expect Terrell Bernard to get about 130 plus tackles. He's got some big play upside to him where we've seen him get upwards of 6 or more sacks. So he does rush the passer. He's good in pass coverage. He'll get some pass deflection. So Bernard should be a pretty high upside linebacker with LB1 potential, no doubt. Milano really doesn't have a floor. If he's not going to convert, he's really worthless to you, and there's like virtually no tackling floor. Again, he's just kind of more of a better real NFL football player than he is for IDP production. So Williams is a guy that I think is a high-end handcuff, though, in case of an injury. So if there is a bit of a discount on Dorian Williams just due to the lack of opportunity right now, I think you might be able to go in and slide in and obtain some Dorian Williams, stash him, get him real late in drafts or something, and just kind of set him on your bench and just wait. Because if he doesn't get an opportunity in Buffalo, he should somewhere else. Considering the fact that he's put the kind of production on the field that we love to see, I imagine it's worthy of at least getting a new contract should he not get an opportunity under the current one. So I think he's a solid stash, or maybe even a buy low if the opportunity is right. Maybe your local manager had Williams a couple of years ago and is kind of mad that he's not been able to get the opportunity or get back on the field. Maybe he's upset. Maybe you can get in for fourth round pick, third round pick, or something like that, and stash him, that would be outstanding because he's got a long career ahead of him. And guys like this will find a way on the field. So I think Shaq Thompson historically been a great producer. I think this is kind of where he ends up falling off. I think he's probably facing a ring, and he's just going to kind of play on the sidelines and mentor these young guys and just try to coach up this team. And then if they absolutely need him, maybe he steps on the field. But I don't think we can account for Shaq Thompson much at all this year. Now, if we look at the defensive back room, the safety room still consists of Taylor Rapp, DeMar Hamlin, and then and Cole Bishop. Then they also added Derek Forrest to this defensive back room, which I think is a great add for what he was been able to produce for us in IDP. He's actually a pretty decent safety, a guy with a decent floor. You can get tackles, pass breakups, things like that. Now, if we look at the cornerback room, they've added Tre'Davious White. They still got Cam Lewis, Taron Johnson, Christian Benford, and then a bunch of just guys. So the guys that I mentioned here are the guys that are pretty well the guys that we care about for IDP. That did lose Rasul Douglas and Kyer Elam to free agency. But now we've got, again, Taylor Rapp kind of maybe gets some more, or not Taylor Rapp, maybe Cam Lewis gets some more work. Taron Johnson gets more snaps. Christian Benford, all these guys can maybe get a few more snaps with the exit of Rasul Douglas and Kyer Elam. Cole Bishop is a young guy they drafted at safety a couple years ago, and I think he's going to get more opportunity as well. That's kind of what this tells me as well. Cole Bishop is a pretty highly touted safety, and I imagine that should he get a full-time role and a good opportunity, he could be a pretty good playmaker, so he might be a good stash. Now, a couple years into the league, he hasn't had quite the opportunity, so his value should kind of dip a little bit, and you might be able to swoop in, stash him if you need some defensive backup, and just kind of see what happens, because I don't think that it's going to cost you a whole lot. Fourth round pick, third round pick, you're not really losing a whole lot. Those are pretty hard to hit anyways in your rookie draft. So if you can go get a guy with the kind of upside that I kind of hired him compared to something like a Cooper DeJean, should he get the right opportunity? Now that's kind of a big if, especially in Buffalo, but you know, there's some opportunity there. The talent is there, and I think should he get an opportunity, he could take hold and run with it. So other than that, we're kind of just looking at like Taron Johnson, Christian Benford, and Cam Lewis as nice cornerback streamers in this defensive back room. But really, when you're streaming cornerback, you only want to target these guys when they're playing high-powered offenses if you expect a back-and-forth affair. Because these are guys that have some decent upside, guys that get their hands on the ball, have presented a pretty good tackling floor. I bet a few games last year on tackles for Cam Lewis, Taron Johnson. I think Christian Benford was in there as well. So they do have some nice floors, and for IDP, they're more streamer plays, nobody that you're really going to feel good about putting in your defensive back slot for the entirety of the year. So, that's going to wrap up the Buffalo Bills review. Before we get out of here, though, I do want to talk to you guys a little bit about the Fantasy Football Expo. Go get your 2025 Fantasy Football Expo tickets at thefantasyfootballexpo.com. It's this August, the 8th through the 10th in Canton, Ohio. Go check it out. Check out the new fan packages, and if you want to join us and other well-known content creators at the NFL Hall of Fame in Village, you can do so. So go to thefantasyfootballexpo.com, get your tickets today, and go check out the guys. Go check out the booth at the Fantasy Football Expo. Talk to the guys, get to know them, and I've heard it's a really good time. I wish I could join this year, but I will not be able to make it. So I just want to thank everybody for your time. I appreciate you tuning in. It means a lot that you can take that time out of your day to watch what I have to say, listen in, and hopefully add some value to your fantasy leagues and your play style as well. So if you enjoyed what the Buffalo Bills team review, we're going to get more into the AFC East as time goes on, among other things. So keep an eye on the channel, keep an eye on the website, consider a subscription, and hopefully we can kind of rope you in because we have a lot to offer here. We've got snap tools, we've got data tools, we've got rankings, we've got videos, we've got betting, all kinds of things. Consider a subscription. Go check it out at the website, and hopefully we can reel you in and, drop a like, comment, subscribe so you don't miss turn on the notifications as well so you don't miss a video. So thanks again, everybody, and we'll get into some more AFC East team reviews in the coming weeks. So we'll see you next time.
Thank you for watching the IDP Plus YouTube network. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Be sure to tap the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload new content.